Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we watch an anime and talk about it, and then it takes me a long time to edit it and release it, and you guys like, why did it take so long for me to get this episode? And I'm working on that. It's been crazy. But thank you for listening. Like I said, we are a podcast that watches anime. We discuss it like a book club, and then we turn our discussion over to you, the audience, to tell us what you agree with, what you disagree with, where we're right, where we're wrong. This is a discussion where all opinions are valid, especially if you like Kisniver.
Oh.
Starting off
Gross.
Anyway, I need the help of my co-host to discuss the anime we watched, which is the second half of Delicious in Dungeon, by the way, if you didn't tell that from when you clicked on this episode. Let me introduce them first off with his mildly warm take. He's the stuffing in my Thanksgiving dinner. It's Jeremy.
Kobolds are kind of a lazy character. Sometimes.
Mild.
Yes.
I don't even need a glass of milk, but I'm slightly uncomfortable.
Amazing.
We also have the stale snack in the vending machine that just won't fall off. Give me, I'm hungry. I'm sitting in a hospital and I need something to eat. It's Jason.
It's because I steal your money.
Yeah.
I think there are too many anime centered around middle and high school.
Middle school and high school?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably fair. Could that have something to do with your age? Your advanced age?
Is it
All
me?
All the gray we scored?
Have I done something? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Yes. Or rather, hello, fellow children. We're here to watch anime.
I said there's too many, as if I don't want to see them anymore.
Do you think you'd feel that way if you were a high schooler?
I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm giving you the 63. I just didn't have any questions for Jeremy. My name is Troy, and my mildly hot take is I think isekai is an overused genre.
I think there's lots of
man.
room left for isekai. That's my new hot take.
Wait, you yell at me always for like coming up with new stuff, and then you're not going to say anything about this?
Jeremy, don't do that. How dare you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll never do it again.
There, he's properly punished.
I feel like there's bias on this podcast.
Not at all. Shut up. Anyway. So, yeah, we did watch part 2 of Delicious in Dungeon. This would be episodes 13 through 24. And you may have heard me say in the last episode that this anime is reaching a conclusion in this season. And I was very excited about it. I had talked to people. I had talked to my daughter. I had read it online. And I'm sure a lot of you have posted comments. We haven't released that episode at the time of recording this, so I haven't read those comments. But I do apologize because this does end on a to be continued. So there is.
I was a little
more.
upset.
This was Troy's subverted expectations.
I thought about warning you, and I decided it was funner if I didn't.
When I got halfway, like the 10-minute mark in episode 24, I was like, there's no way they can wrap all this up. And then there was a to be continued. I was like, Troy, that.
Trust me, no one is more upset about it than me, because I was like, my daughter's like, no, I didn't say that. I'm like, you said that. I said it on the internet.
Everybody.
Do you know what they're going to do to me?
You made me a liar.
All right. So the important part of this is listen to your children. Don't just like assume you know what they say.
And trust but verify.
They said.
All right. let's go to our non-spoiler reviews of the second half of Delicious in Dungeon, and we're going to start off with Jeremy. Oh.
Well, what a surprise. He's great. It was great. I really enjoyed it. The things that they did with the characters were really entertaining. There were some very touching moments, explorations that you don't see quite so raw. Really well done. Great humor, tied in well with the character exploration. The world building is great. Seeing more of the dungeon was interesting. I think that the cooking part actually took more of a back seat in the second half compared to the first half, and I didn't mind that at all. It didn't seem like it was about cooking anymore and making the dungeon food so much as dealing with the scenario that they wound up in the last season, in the last half. And another thing that was interesting is that we didn't get the change of intro and outro until episode 14. So we actually technically had one more episode to go before we were really in the second core. And it was a very important episode. A lot of things happened that were rather painful. So, overall, I really enjoy it. I think this is definitely an anime that I would want to add to a personal collection.
Jason? Why don't you wait for me to give my thoughts and then you can share as well? No, I'm just kidding. You go ahead.
The bias is palpable. It was good. I had some fun with it. I'm just not. I don't know. It's hard to describe, and I think we'll get into it more during the podcast, but I think one of my favorite parts about this anime is the world building. Like this dungeon, what it was. It has a past. It's its own character, not just the mechanics of it, similar to other anime, but like this was a place where people lived. Like this was an above ground city, and now it's a dungeon. I really liked how they brought that together, and but the story continues on from part one, and it was good.
I felt the anime would definitely hit its stride in the second half. I was a little worried with where we ended in part one. It felt we finished the main quest line, and then it was a very natural extension.
We didn't finish. Sorry, go ahead with your review.
Don't interrupt me when I'm talking. I have the microphone. It's my turn. Look, a lot of the issues that I had in the first part weren't major issues, but didn't bother me as much, or I kind of came to a understanding about them. Like, okay, look, I'll meet you halfway, you meet me halfway, and it felt like me and the anime did that. Also, this anime did some great character show don't tell stuff. Everyone feels so realistic. Guys, if you're watching an isekai and you're like, hey, I relate with that gamer nerd, I need that gamer nerd character. No, your gamer nerd's in this anime, and he's a much more realistic take on it than anything I've ever seen in any isekai. Sorry, I like
but
Subaru,
it's not an isekai.
but I don't know gamer nerds who are also doing push-ups and anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm all over the place. I realize that. It was great. Let's go on. Let's move on. The new opening and closing. Your guys' thoughts.
I liked the first half better. The song was okay. It was poppy, but it made the animation and the theme made it feel very sitcom. Like I felt like I was about to step into a sitcom anime. The ending was fine.
Yeah, I agree. The intro was way too lighthearted for the content. There were a lot of scenes in this that were pretty heavy, and it was kind of jarring when that intro played. And of course, that's just because I was going episode to episode, so maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal if it was later. But I don't know. Even then, the amount of comedy and humor in some of the episodes was pretty sparse compared to the first half, and based on the intro.
You come out of that intro and it's like, oh, dead body falls from the roof.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's not what I was expecting. But the outro was fine.
I agree with that sentiment. I think the first LP was better. There is some really interesting visuals that they put in the second OP.
Giants.
Well, no, like, okay, so like the people dancing at the bottom of the pillar of food are the kingdom people, and it's like, okay, why is that? Why are we falling down? Why are people turning into balls of light? And why are they looking at themselves inside of a pot of cooking food? Like, oh, are they going to eat themselves? I was just wondering what they're trying to say with some of the visuals. But
they addressed that, by the way.
Also, it got updated when a new character joins the party. They get to join the OP. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
The ED I really liked. Netflix. I don't want to skip the end credits in an anime. I do like to listen to those usually. Let me choose, okay? Put the button there, and then if I don't touch it, that's okay. No need to auto jump me. So I didn't get to hear it as much as I wanted to, but I did like the tone. It was fine for an ED. All right. Before we go on to spoilers, though, we need to tell you what we're watching next time. Next time we're watching Kaiju number 8.
Yeah.
And one of us read the manga. And they're gonna lord that over the entire episode. But I won't tell you who it was.
Dun, dun,
clearly
dun.
the smartest one here.
The elitist.
I don't know if the smartest of a group of Bakas is something to brag about, but here we go. All right. Let's go on now to our spoiler warning. Again, spoilers for Delicious in Dungeon. All of it. Everything of the first season. I'm sure a second season is coming. Spoiler for that. But I just want to make it very clear that we know that. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry. All right. We're also going to assume that you followed along through the first 12 episodes or at least seen it, so we're not going to be like reintroducing the concept of the dungeon or what the group's quest is. But with a little bit of recap, they just beat the red dragon. And then they ate it. And they all went to bed. So Jason,
and they resurrected Fallon.
What was your issue with me saying they completed the main quest line?
The way you made it sound because you were talking about the ending, and you were like, they finished the main quest, and then it's not over, and so I was like, no, they didn't, because they still need to find Fallon.
Yeah, but where we left off, they did find Fallon. That was the quest. Go kill Red Dragon, save Fallon.
Okay.
And they did. And then I was worried.
I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about the end.
You will be punished later in the editing.
I just figured I would have got a fire grenade in Helldivers.
There you go. It's where all the sneezes and coughs that he keeps, like, from all the previous episodes.
So he was up on a rock, and I meleeed him, and how high he went was ridiculous. Like, he should not have gone that high. It was really funny.
I believe it.
All right, so we see Fallon waking up and wandering around. We should talk about Fallon, because we didn't last time, because I thought she'd be a member of the regular party, but then she disappears mostly again.
I kind of feel like we shouldn't talk. Well, I guess let's talk about her pre-transformation.
Yeah, just the character Fallon. Because like I said, in part 1, I said, hey, let's hold off until part 2, and then part 2 was like, hey, we're not giving you hardly any character moments, so once again, I messed up royally. So, just thoughts on the character Fallon before we get into our main party.
Personality-wise, she seemed very mousy and not much of note. I think she has more impact on her friends and brother than is shown, but like she is fascinating post-resurrection because of her ability to, she's casting without chanting. She seems to be much more powerful, and then she's whisked off screen, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know much about her then. So like the only time we really get any like real connection with her is in flashbacks. And those flashbacks are more explaining what she was like and what happened to her than actually seeing what happened. So, yeah, I think it'd be interesting to get more screen time with her.
Yeah, I kind of see her as the tragic mystery, right? So what you have is a character who we get from the perspective of all these characters was just great, like perfect, almost unbelievably perfect, really, if you think about it. And that's kind of an interesting thing to play with. I don't know if they're intentionally doing something with that, or if that's just how they chose to write her and she really is that cool and it's shallow. I don't know. It didn't bother me. It didn't come across as shallow, but it could be. I see her as a mixture of the item that moves the plot forward, but also that character that everybody's enamored with and I want to know more of because of that. And seeing what happens to her, you can't help but feel compassion. In the first intro, there's several scenes where she's like in the darkness and she's huddled up, curled in a ball, things like that, right? Clutching her legs. So you get the hint that her story is going to be a sad one. Things are not good. I thought that was because she was in the belly of the dragon being devoured. I did not realize it's because of what's going to happen afterwards. So to me, what they did with her was more valuable than what she might have been portrayed to be. So I do want to see where they're going, though.
And I think there's a decent amount of interest engendered due to how well the character development of the main characters are. And then we see them in emotional distress over her. And they do a really good job of making you feel that loss of connection or missing that character.
Mm-hmm. It also gives you a hint of like how much competence there is in writing characters, to where it makes me want to trust that the writers know what they're doing with the tidbits that they're giving us about her.
Yeah, I think those tidbits I find interesting enough, like you said, to trust, because we see she was a weird child who could see spirits, so that everyone kind of kept her at a distance.
I see dead people.
Right. She's basically that character. And then her brother leaves her, so she gets isolated and goes to school, and nobody likes her until she meets Marcel, and then finally has a friend. And so she has this relationship with everyone where she's constantly left alone, left abandoned or isolated. So the fact that now the dungeon is doing it to her as well just seems to stack onto this guilt the main characters have over how did we let her life keep going this route. But it does seem like she's the type of person that people flock to. There's men in love with her proposing to her. There's everyone, all these people are willing to go on this dangerous journey to save her, plus a dwarf who loves cooking. So like you said, I trust that she's interesting enough. What we see, I think, is really cool. I buy into the idea of Fallon. I wish we could have more time with her, but it makes sense for plot reasons why we cannot. Okay. the rest of the characters. We'll start off with Laios, our human knight. Your guys' thoughts on him in this half?
He's basically the same as the first half, but I like how they are making him learn lessons. And all the lessons that he's learning they're hard knocks. Because, like in the first half when he eats the thing he's not supposed to eat, he gets sick. In this half, he gets involved with some mushrooms he shouldn't, and it affects the whole party. Stuff like that. And so I like the lessons he's learning. And the character development is kind of that slow burn that I appreciate. But he still has his obsession with eating dungeon food. And I love that they kept that. So, yeah, I like Laios.
I also loved that his obsession wound up going beyond the dungeon food even. And it's just a fascination and obsession with the beasts of the dungeon. And that's cool. Like when the new character gets introduced and she's half beast, they have to blindfold him and lock him up basically so that he doesn't harass her. And just those moments where you get to see what he's really like make him much more palatable to me, at least, than he was in the first half. Because in the first half, I found him kind of boring and oblivious to everything, and I didn't like it. He was okay, but definitely on the lower end of the characters for me. But in this half, he got to express what he was thinking a lot more. And I got to see some consistency and some pushback. Like you said, Jason, he had to learn some things. He had to learn some things in some conversations more than once, too. And it let me get a better insight into who he was as a person. And I can then get a better perspective on what he was doing in the first half. And I wind up liking him a lot more. He's far more interesting character.
The more I watched him, the deeper the thought I had of what a bold choice for a main character.
Yeah.
And it's just funny you mentioned that he's boring because he finds himself boring too. That scene of where he's like, I don't get to be a fantastical creature. I don't have anything special about being human. I'm not a dwarf or a gnome or all these other races that get special features. I'm just a boring human. If he was playing a fantasy video game, he would hate his character.
Yes.
These are the same complaints I've had playing D&D. Like,
Me too.
I can see in the dark.
Me too.
I still pick Human Knight every time.
I know. I refuse. I'll pick whatever alien's available.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, and there'd been mentions of his awkward socialness, but getting to see not only how it's affected his life in this town, the flashback of like one guy trying to get to know him and him just like getting up and leaving. I've done that move. And I was, but his fascination with the beast, the way he's so hyper focused on it. I know there's theories about him and like if he's on the spectrum or anything, but no matter what, he's just a very interesting choice for main character, especially since there's a character here that is classic anime main character. He is set up completely. He has a backstory ready to go and everything. And they're like, no, this boring human who's just weird about monsters. And everyone's like, you're going to be the chosen hero. And he's like, no, that's not me. I am a side character. I'm not even supposed to be in the story. No, he doesn't literally say that, but that is very much the impression I got. And I found that very interesting. And like I said, a bold choice. So he definitely was more appealing in the second half to me.
Actually, I think they leaned into it a little more on this side for practicality than food related. But Laios's ability to not only identify monsters, but like what they are, what their weaknesses are, how they react. I thought that was neat to have that kind of like book smarts character about the monsters in the dungeon.
Our next character is Marcel, the elf mage.
She is great. I really like Marcel. And I like her character arc. In fact, I think she's got one of the stronger character arcs along with Chilchuk. She came from magic school. She's kind of used to this, brute that she runs along with, Laios. She's very fond of his sister. And so, but she comes across as if she wants to be prim and proper. And I love that, she's slowly learning, survival doesn't have to be terrible. And also that, she makes this really great comparison later on where she's like, I've got goals and there's some unpleasant things that I can do to get to my goals. Or if I try and go around those unpleasant things, it's going to put my goals off. I thought that was really insightful. Like, that was a really cool line. And I also like that she's very much into, the dark magic, the black magic, but she just views it as ancient magic or different magic.
Got to redefine it. He's used new terms.
Right. And I love that she's trying with all of her heart to understand it and make it not terrible, because that seems to be all, whenever someone casts that ancient magic, there's always a negative side effect. It feels like warlock magic or necromancer magic.
Blood magic.
Yeah. So, she's a fascinating character. I really like her.
Yeah, she's great. Good entertainment. I don't really have anything to add for her.
Yeah, she was one of the characters I didn't have many new thoughts. Like, I still very much enjoyed her comedy bits, her and even her usefulness to the group continues to grow and grow. Her realizing they need a second caster in the group and choosing to train someone. But the episode, which we'll get more into, where we see her fear, her fear, and not that it ties too much into free reign, but the idea of she's going to have to age past everyone that she loves, and she's already got abandonment issues, and then tying that into how she treats everyone in the dungeon and why she's working so hard to save a best friend, and even willing to cross lines that everyone else is not okay with crossing, was really insightful. And I also think it's really insightful because I think it's going to tie in directly to our antagonist, who has the exact same issue. That's just a theory because I don't know where this fully goes, but I found that episode super insightful. And then, like I said, I was tying it back into the antagonist. I'm like, okay, that all kind of checks out and supports each other. So very, very good stuff with her. All right, now my main man, Chilchuk, our half-foot halfling rogue,
who has a wife and daughters.
Right.
Oh my God.
He was really good this side as well. I think he got more attention the first half than he did this half. But I really liked, his straight man antics, him being the voice of reason. But I also really like the confliction that he has, where he's starting to lose grip of his own standards for himself, because he is starting to, he's becoming attached to his group, which he tries not to be, but they've been in the dungeon so long, he's having a hard time not. And I like how he's continually trying to keep them on course, and not always succeeding. So yeah, he was good in this side as well.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. These characters just kind of dipped into the supporting role. I really enjoyed them. I thought they were funny, but nothing is really staying with me as particularly interesting. They were just good.
Right. For Chilchuk, I think his biggest scene is near the beginning where he wants to go back and he spends the episode whining about his party and how horrible they are, and then having to come to the realization your work friends have become your real friends, and what you actually are worried about are them. And then once he kind of crosses that threshold, we see him, like you said, doing things that he said he wouldn't do, sharing personal details, and even getting involved in combat a little bit, while having to point out why he doesn't get involved in combat multiple times, which I also love, because it did kind of bug me, like, oh, we just have a guy who doesn't get involved in combat, and then him literally showing, like, see why I can't? Do you now understand that it's dangerous for me to get involved in the combat? He was great, and Jason already pointed out, just the perfect straight man. One of the best I've seen in a long time. He knocks it out of the park every time. He's always funny. He is my favorite character by far. Very complex too. The fact that other characters kind of see him as a scoundrel and a cheapskate and someone who's always like, no, you got to pay the guild and then pay me and I get 2%, or stuff like that. That's very much his type. But he has this softer side. He now cares for people and he's willing to risk himself. Very complex, well done character. Not much different from how I felt in the first half. I just felt they expanded on it in the second half. Okay, you have to admit this character grew and changed. Jeremy Senshi, the dwarf cook.
I mean,
we got his backstory, man.
Yeah, that part of it for sure. Which that was a really good backstory. Yeah, I did not expect that coming from him, but it explains so much about, why he has no eyelids.
Jason, your thoughts on Senshi?
He's always been fairly mysterious, and I really liked the way the story developed into them making educated guesses about who he really was and stuff that I missed, like I didn't really think about. And I like that kind of mystery around him. But also, I think it was neat that he then, confides in the group. He's opening up to them as well, and he's not, even though he's basically a dungeon Superman in the first half, he shows a softer side and also a very softer side.
Oh God, that was so good.
But also he does a great job in delivering those values that he has to the group through his actions, whether it be cooking or protecting or being that voice of guidance. So, yeah, I really liked him.
What's crazy is that he's only 46. So he's still, like, super young for a dwarf.
He definitely grew, in my opinion, in this season. I liked him more and more as it went on. And yeah, getting that backstory, and it's a tragic backstory. It puts a lot of his behaviors into context, the way he, like, oh, young'uns gotta eat, and why that's so important to him. And then, oh man, when we get his backstory, I literally took moments to, like, just think back to everything that we had seen with him, and he just added this extra layer to him. Also, not only the transformation stuff was hilarious, but even just like everyone hanging out in a bedroom and he's like topless, laid out on a bed like a pinup girl, and I was like, yeah, sensual Senshi just hanging out there. Good for him, I guess.
Which actually makes perfect sense later when he does do the funny, like when they get transformed and he's an elf, and
right.
That scene works because they set it up that way. Like, if he wasn't the kind of person that laid around like that half naked, it wouldn't really work as well.
Right. So yeah, he was fantastic as always. I still groaned a little bit when he's like, I'm gonna cook. I'm like, all right, well, I guess we'll just go back to the plot in like 5 minutes. But it does definitely more of a backseat. And I will say, of the cooking, and maybe I just didn't catch onto it in the first part, there's probably been comments, I assume, at this point who have told me this. But I did feel, I felt the ingredients, while though fantastical in this one, I was able to correlate more 1-to-1 with real ingredients, and then realized, oh, these, these are cooking techniques that could be utilized. You can find common ground between real ingredients and these fantastical ones, so I enjoyed a little bit more of the technical aspect of it.
I also liked that he gave that feel of, yes, I'm cooking for you, but I'm also cooking for me not to eat, but like almost like this is my meditation.
Yeah. Right, and now we'll go back to the story. Fallon is wandering around, and when I mean wandering around, she literally goes out a 2-story window and then walks around town until she runs into the Mad Mage. Now, we're going to talk about the Mad Mage later when we get their real name. Then I'm going to stop us and talk about the Mad Mage.
Oh, is that what they call him? Is the Mad Mage? Oh,
Yeah,
they call him the Lunatic Magician in the sub.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she runs into him, and he's very upset because his dragon is dead. But, hey, he found its soul, and he tells her she's got to find the king, King Deagle.
I actually
Delgal.
liked this scene.
Delgal.
There you go.
What was cool about it is the Mad Mage doesn't even recognize Fallon. Just instantly sees the soul of the dragon and starts talking to Fallon as if it is the dragon. Just didn't even phase the Mad Mage.
Yeah, she's inconsequential.
Laios realizes his sister is gone because Kensuke, his sword, fell down and woke him up. And he goes out and finds her at the Dragon Bones. The elf gets mad at him, calling him a thief. Just quick little sidebar. The elf remembers him from the paintings. Does that mean that a adventurer could use the paintings as a shortcut to get to the Mad Mage and win the prize? Because it seems more like a time portal than just into an illusionary world if the Mad Mage is able to remember the events of the painting.
That's what I was wondering. Are they just straight up time machines?
I don't think they are.
Or is he just connected to him so he... Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think that the justification is it is a moment in the past. And in that moment, yeah, what you do there only happens most likely like in the painting, but also to the lunatic because he made it. But I don't think you could kill him. Right.
So like if in the painting Laios had prevented the king from drinking the poison, that wouldn't have changed the real past.
I don't think so.
No. I just now had the thought it's very similar to Marcel seeing the vision of her own familiars. So since the Mad Mage made the paintings, what happens to them, that knowledge comes back to him. That's probably what it is.
That makes sense.
Dang, I thought it was like shortcut.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. The rest of the group arrives. Fallon's going crazy, knocks them away. The elf makes some blood dragon wyverns to attack them and later search for them and spy on them. And then he sends them. Oh, we see the meat that they had collected rolling into the blood, and all this blood is
blood sausage.
Blood sausage, and disappearing, which is going to be used for the spell that is used on Fallon. Actually, I think he already used it, right? Fallon's already gotten, at this point, been enchanted to transform. So all this calories is for this transformation.
Did she hit him yet? Did she hit her brother yet?
Yeah, this is right when she hits the brother.
Yeah, okay. Then right after that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and they're not wyverns, they're iverns.
Why are you like this?
They're iverns because they're his eyes. They call him his eyes all the time. Come on, it's good. It's funny.
We would have taken Hooverns or Whatverns, but
Iverns.
No.
Troy, can we move on?
Aw. I tried.
They are sent into the ground and then into a garbage compactor that will crush you unless 3PO opens the door.
Oh God. Back when Star Wars was good.
And then Lio said it. There's no way it can get worse.
Yes. And then the tentacle.
Okay,
Anyway,
anime.
the room's collapsing, but a ghost opens up a hole and pulls Marcel through, and Chilchuck and Senshi follow her. Now, Laios was still on the surface. But they all get away. No. Elf leaves. Orcs show up.
The
orcs
pulled down too.
Or were they carrying him?
Yeah. Senshi had him, I believe.
Okay. Everyone gets out. And they end up in a room, and the orcs find them. And this is a different group, same tribe, but different group of orcs than they had met in the first half. And they figure out that the lady who's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill these guys." They're like, "Wait, you're the sister of the chief." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I am. You guys know my brother." And they explain what they've been doing here, and like they killed the red dragon. It's like, all right, well then let's make medicine. And then she forces it down their throat by spitting it.
This is good.
Yeah, Marcel lying there, like Laios is unconscious, so he doesn't know. He gets the medicine, and then Marcel is awake and just staring in horror for her turn.
Yeah, she's like, I don't need it. I'm just low on mana. I'm fine. So good.
Chilchuck is upset. This is where his scene starts, where he's like, they're gonna want to stay. They're gonna want to go after Fallon. We're all gonna die here. I want to leave. Senshi's like, well, you're kind of being a coward. He's like, fine, I'm a coward. I don't care. I just want to go. He's like, I'm gonna go get my stuff. And Senshi convinces the orc sister to go with him. And then while on the way there, he spends the whole time complaining about his party. Laios is like this and Marcel's like that. And Senshi just cooks everything. And then she's like, why don't you just be honest with them and tell them you're worried about them dying? Which he then kind of comes to realization that's what he's really worried about. And they get the stuff. He also notices that the dragon corpse is gone. The bones are all gone. There's just a blood trail left. They do follow a ghost. They find out that, the ghosts here are not evil. And they will actually guide you on safe paths if you follow them. And then he gets all their stuff and brings it back and asks Laios if they can please leave. That he's sure they will die if they stay. Senshi even admits they're low on supplies. They shouldn't stay. They all agree they're going to go back to the surface.
The only thing that was weird to me was that the orc was incredibly insightful. There were moments where she looked like she was ready to tear his head off, I thought that was more orc-like, what I expected. But the fact that these orcs are so intelligent, and maybe she's unique, maybe she's special in that she can read people so well and in conversations decipher. Like, she's got a bit of a psychological talent there. That kind of a talent is difficult to see being hand in hand with a savage population that can't get along with other species. Because if you understand psychology, eventually you're going to have some leader that's going to encourage getting along, because that's ultimately better for your civilization. So I did find that to be a little bit weird, but I liked it still, and I thought they did a good job with her as a character. But yeah, it caught me off guard. I was expecting her to just continue along that path of being irritated with him until, something else happened or something. I didn't expect her to be reasonable.
Yeah, I think I agree. You're right. They are very like this barbaric, hey, we kill the humans we find. And even though they point out like the humans that find us kill us, but they're not quite like what I always hold as the bar is like Klingons. That's dumb, I know, but Klingons are the bar, right?
Yeah.
They seem a little bit less savage than that, so it didn't come out to the point where it bugged me, because we see them like playing with children and doing kind stuff, It seemed almost more situational. There's how they acted, but you're right. If they're at that level of wisdom among them, there should be people who are like, hey, maybe we need more empathy and try cooperation a little more.
Yeah. I mean, even the Klingons ultimately integrated.
Yeah.
So,
The one
to a degree.
All right. In the next episode, we see Mr. Tansu, the gnome who has been researching the dungeon and has resurrection magic. He finds Cabra's group. We didn't talk very much about Cabra's group, but they're this big party of adventurers led by Cabra. And we need to talk about Cabra because I'm going to be honest, I cannot really get a handle on this character or his motives, but I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are first.
It's really interesting because the anime first introduces us to him as if he's this knightly figure, like this paragon of morality, and that he's going to do best by his group and be the ultimate paragon, if you will. And quickly we learn that he's mid as far as an adventurer, and that he is really fond of his group, and he does go out of his way to make sure that they're all taken care of and safe to the best of his ability. But this
is the second time being dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In this anime.
He's obviously making mistakes that the group is suffering from. However, later on, he ends up with this he almost feels like a gossip, like a paparazzi reporter waiting for the next big dungeon related drama alert to happen. He's less interested in profiting off of someone's mistake or killing the evil thing. No, he wants to see what's the next juicy gossip between these two adventurer groups. But then he turns around and his motives seem to be very clear about he loves this town. The dungeon is an economic force to keep the town alive. He doesn't want to see the dungeon shut down. And it almost seems like he doesn't want the Mad Mage to be gone either because he needs the dungeon to be here. Yet they just need to strike that balance of monsters aren't coming out to kill townsfolk, but we're not going too deep to actually solve the problem. That seems to be where he's at. And so it's a really strange thing going on with him, but then he ends up teaming up with the elves. So I don't know. He's a little tough to read, but he's an interesting character nonetheless.
Yeah. I actually really like this character simply because of, like you said, that sort of approach where he doesn't know exactly what's going to happen between these characters. He's very interested to know because they're all wild cards, and he's very much a manipulator and a string puller. He's a puppeteer, and this is not something that he has enough control over to be able to move with confidence. So he's in the information gathering stage of being a puppeteer. So he's doing the paparazzi thing, and he's like, I don't know what this guy's going to do. I had my suspicions about who he was and what his personality really was like, but I've never seen it exposed. So I understand where that approach is coming from, because like you said, he does have his own goals. Ultimately, I mean, he would have loved it if he could have taken the role of the lunatic magician, not being a lunatic himself, but taking over the dungeon, and then making it into an economic resource that also stayed in check and wouldn't be dangerous, because there's way too much concern coming from him about the dungeon actually vomiting out monsters that go and slaughter the population. So he doesn't want it to be unchecked. He doesn't necessarily want it to even stay in the hands of the lunatic magician ultimately. But until since he found out that there's no way he's capable of doing it, even with a party, he doesn't have a solution. And so sometimes if you don't have a solution, the best thing to do is just promote that things don't change until you can come up with a solution. And so I think that's where he's at right now is, I can't achieve what I want, so better to just keep things in homeostasis. And then encountering Leos kind of changes his mind. So what I like so much about him is that he is on the fly, absorbing everything that's happening around him, holding out multiple possibilities of this could go that way, this could go that way, this could go that way. These people might do these different things. How do I move the pieces on the board without the pieces on the board, knowing that I'm moving them so that they leave only the checkmate of what I want. And it's a beautiful thing to see when it's, especially in an anime, when it's not the main character. And I think this is the character you were talking about, Troy, as like, this is the prime main character candidate here. In most other anime, he would have been. So seeing him do this from the sidelines is fascinating to me. I really like that.
I also find it really hilarious that past like floor 3 and beyond, they just keep dying.
Yeah,
because
they even die again.
by the end of this, I think they're heading down to 7, if I counted right. But like, yeah, floor 3 they die. Floor 4 they drowned. Floor 5 they get stomped. So and then like, okay, we got to get out of here. We're out.
Yep.
Yeah, everything you said makes sense, Jeremy. I definitely got the reading of him of, hey, I have a main character backstory. I have a main character party. I have a main character. Hey, I'm not strong enough, but I have desire. And look. But man, every time he had a big scene, I just felt like I was seeing a swerve. Like, they're all upset, they're robbed, and then they're like, oh, and then he's very smart at deducing who the party is that robbed him. And then they get to the party, he's like, I have deduced they didn't actually rob us, but I want to see more. And then he seems like he's questioning Laios really hard, like, oh, maybe I'm a villain and I'm pushing for something. And then the other characters, man, he's like, let's all calm down. Let's diffuse the situation. Let's all be rational here. And I'm like, I every time I think I know which way you're going the other way, which very much fits into what you're saying.
Never let them know your next move.
Yeah, right. I guess I just like there's points where I'm like, oh, so is he going to be like the real villain of this story? But then he's helping. He's trying to keep the elves out from causing a bigger mess. And
like that moment when he's getting into the window, right, into the portal, and he turns and he says, well, don't forget my name next time. You're like, right. That's villain talk,
right?
What are you saying?
Or like he starts talking. Well, so there's this scene a little bit where he kills a bunch of bad guys, like straight up murders them. And the guy's even begging for mercy. And he's like, nope, no mercy. Like, we can't have bad people ruining things. And then I'm like, okay, so he's like really strong in justice. And he's like, I don't like that Laios. I don't trust him. I'm waiting to see his mask fall off. I want to see him exposed. And I'm like, oh, so you're evil. Like,
it wasn't justice.
Right? Like, and when I say he's all over the place, I don't mean it like in a way that's bad writing either. Like,
right.
But I have a hard time getting a handle on this character.
He seems so giddy when he found out about the black magic resurrection. He was just like, oh, juicy juice.
Yes. He's very sus. And then he does we'll get to it. But the scene where he stabs Fallon, and then everyone's like, nope, that was actually really good. He did good in that scene. And I'm like, well, yeah, technically, I guess that's true. That just felt so evil, like throat slash, stab, heart stab, liver stab. But all right.
I love that afterwards, Leos is like, well, that didn't work. So next time you got to stab my sister here, and here.
The rest of his party, I enjoyed too. Jeremy, I feel like you want to say something about kobolds here, though. The kobold in his party.
Oh, God. Okay, so I don't know. There's just something about the way that the kobold is portrayed, and we later get a different kobold that isn't really a kobold. They're so much more like dogs than the cat people are like cats, and I just think it's really funny. I don't know. I would have liked them to do something more halfway between a human and a dog, but I guess a kobold isn't. It's technically a different race.
Yeah, the kobolds were very much like dude in dog suit.
Right. Yeah.
But then the cat girl is literally a cat girl, just a lot more fur.
Yeah, which was more interesting. Just because I haven't seen most cat girls portrayed that way. Usually it's just the ears that are furry and the tail, right?
But the big thing is the cat girl is a hybrid fusion of two
Right.
species. Whereas the kobold, they're like, no, we just have dog people here.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really fond of their character design because they're just a bit too silly and cartoony compared to everybody else. Until he goes mad. When he gets mad, he's awesome.
Like if a tennis ball bounced past him and he ran after it, you'd be like, yeah, that fits with how they've portrayed him so far.
I would actually like it if that happened. That would be fun. That would be good.
Well, at one point they're throwing food to him. I felt like we were very close to that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Yeah, so they are resurrected. They're still on the water level where they were found. They have to pay Mr. Tansu a resurrection fee.
Our barley's missing.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, they've been robbed again. They know it's the same group from the smell, but they decide they're going to have to go back because they're running out of supplies. They have no food now, and they're low on money. And then as they're heading back, there's all this fog, and these fishmen attack him. Another group of fishmen. And he realizes the fishmen are actually his party, and it's an illusion. And he manages to stop the caster, and it's the corpse retrievers that had met them earlier, which I didn't expect them to follow up on because those guys had said, like, don't warn them. We want things to go well. Well, they literally then followed them, waiting for them to die. But since they missed getting to retrieve them because of Mr. Tansu, they decided, okay, well, we'll get them to kill each other now. That way they can still retrieve them. And this is where Cabra, well, they try to make a slimy deal. Like, hey, since this guy's dead, we'll only take 40% of the retrieval fee, and you can take him back up.
No, he was wounded.
I know. I was saying what the guy said. I was going to get to that. I was doing dramatic emphasis.
Wait.
The bad guy says, take this dead guy. And then Copper says he's not actually dead. So, yes, you're 100% right. I was going to say that. I was.
I thought you had missed that.
Nope. I do miss stuff.
I thought you were taking notes.
I did take notes. Look, I even highlighted it tonight.
There. Yep.
Yeah, I can't believe it, Jeremy. Doubting him like that.
How could I?
Jason, don't be mean to Jeremy. Don't you dare.
What? The bias is palpable.
And it doesn't matter. He's like, yeah, kill this party member of mine. And then the guy was like, no, I'll just kill all of you. And it was actually a cool action scene of him like going up to pretending to kill the guy and stabbing the bad guy instead. But then the caster, the like nicest guy of the corpse retriever is like, hey, I didn't want to do it. They were making me. And he's like, yeah, too bad. We can't have people ruining dungeon society. And they murder him and then just dump him in the water.
And then you're like, so this guy's not evil or he is evil? You're still like questioning.
And I 100% thought like, oh, then they're gonna carry their bodies up and give them for revival, right? And nope, they dump them in the water. This is permanent death for these people. Well, not 100% permanent.
Well, I mean, unless somebody else finds their bones in some later year and they haven't completely detached. Yeah. No, this was just him cleaning up some corruption. That's all it was.
Yeah. And then we see them having the big discussion of like who robbed us and like, okay, well, we know this person's with this person and we know, and they're talking about like Laios's group and the history. We learned like Namari's father has this, like he ruined things for all dwarves in the area. So Namari has this horrible reputation.
Which really puts like the outro of the first core in a different light in the scene where she's in the bar and she's drinking and she's sweating and everybody else is pointing and talking. I thought it was because of something that was going to happen, but it wasn't. It was because of her history. That was cool.
And it also comes back to when a Chilchuck had like, hey, don't ruin her reputation because he knows it's already
bad enough already,
hanging by a thread, right? The scene again. This is where Cabro threw me again. Is he's like, yeah, I don't trust that Laios and his sister. One time when they were working for gold retrievers, I saw them take money and then give it to these other people. And those other people were bad people.
Well, it was more than just that. Like, that's definitely an oversimplification.
It's basically what they were trying to get across, though.
Right.
Well, it was like he was funding some kind of illegal activity, is what he was saying, because he didn't just give the money to them. He continued to give it to them, and then those people got involved in something, which I don't know if it was really that clear what they got involved in. It just seemed that from his perspective, it was shady.
Scrupulous. But he does point out that the reason Laios was giving the money is because those people had like died on the job and hadn't gotten paid.
Yeah.
So it was very clear that Laios was just being a super nice guy and being like, hey, we'll take some of our money. We don't need all of it.
And
this
then
guy's
got
like,
taken advantage of because they just kept taking it.
right. And then Cabra's like, so Laios sucks. It is evil
Well,
for that.
It's where he starts to wonder, being that manipulator, he's going to wonder if other people are doing the same thing. And so he's wondering, is Laios pulling the strings behind the scenes as well? Is he funding operations, but presenting his funding as if he is contributing to a charity? You know, is he embezzling funds, basically? Oh, what's he up to, is what he's wondering. He must be a mastermind.
It feels weird. I guess maybe it's because we know Laios so well that it's like,
Yeah.
Oh, Laios was clearly just being like, I don't care about money. Here's money for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe that's where my perceptions are way different than Cabra's.
Yeah.
Okay. While they're traveling, they're attacked by a sea snake, and they are saved by Shuro. This is the human samurai who is part of the Laios' old group that quit. He's also completely in love with Fallon, so he went home, got all of his ninja women that live with him into his party, and is now coming to save Fallon.
I don't think he went home. It said that earlier he came with retainers, but he left them to go down into the dungeon. So I think they were off doing something else here in the West, and he just went and picked them up.
Okay.
From nearby.
Okay, so he had to go but he didn't go all the way back home east. That makes sense.
Yeah, it would have taken months to sail back. And then,
you don't know that. You have no idea where the east is compared to this
island.
island.
I'm going to assume if they don't know what halflings are, it must be far enough away to prohibit them making day trips.
Yeah, and also this trip that Laios has been on hasn't been more than a couple days. Like maybe
it's been a week at
two?
best by the end of all this.
So like there's no way he's traveling to wherever he's going, get the women, get supplies, and then get back and catch up to them.
This is that scene in Kung Fu Hustle where he's like pounding the guy's head into the ground.
This is a guy who literally has a bell that he's like, if you ring this, one of my people will be there instantly.
Well, that would be magic, which I'm really curious if they're actually going to follow through on that, because that bell got rang. It got rang.
But not on the surface. He said when you're back on the surface, ring the bell.
Oh, really? Did he say on the surface?
Because he was saying if the... We'll get to it. But yeah, he was like, when you're back on the surface, ring this bell if you get in trouble.
Because of black magic. That's right.
He's like, I'm going to go get you in trouble. So when you go to the surface and are in trouble, ring this bell and I'll help you.
Yeah. That's
All
right. So Starving Shuro shows up.
Starving Shuro, yep. And we need to touch on that in a little bit. The two groups decide to join up together and continue on after Laios' group. Who we see, Laios' group, they've been wandering for 3 days and cannot find their way out of the castle town. And they are dying. Getting low on food. Not dying, but it does.
They don't look as bad as Shuro.
No. All right, so we come back to them in the next episode. They can't find a way out. They do find a graveyard full of naked women. These are dryads.
Yeah, they're dryad flowers. Okay, this is one of the best scenes because Senshi runs up behind Chilchuck. Don't look, and he covers his eyes.
Look, the two very separate jokes of Senshi refuses to accept that Chilchuck's not a child, but that Chilchuck is a married man with multiple children and has to be, but still having his innocence protected is very funny. So the scene's funny as is, and then you learn about Chilchuck's children and wife, and you come back to it, you're like, oh, that's really funny.
Yes.
It's a little grotesque as well, this scene, because like
You're right.
they cut one in half and it like spews its spores, and it's basically tear gas to them. And the way they animate this thing getting like halved and then spewing this, it's wow, they did a great job.
Yeah.
And they all have bad pollen allergies. 'Cause, yeah, these spores get on you, they will affect mucus, eyes swollen shut.
I love the molecular teaching moment thing in the audience.
And
It's
then she
right,
had-
Reminded me of like I was watching a Discovery Channel video. Like does
Remember
like
I said-
microscopic zoom in.
Exactly. Remember I said this is like cells at work? I get cells at work vibes. This very much felt like it.
So they managed to survive this thanks to Chilchuck helping Senshi, since Chilchuck can still see since his eyes were covered when they got sprayed. Even as he's being blinded, they survive. Marcel's staff is broken, and I missed how it broke.
In the compression room, it snapped.
Thank you. See, I guess I missed a lot in that scene. So she's trying to mend that, so she misses this battle, and then they all come back together and they start basically cooking the plant people's pods and stuff for food. The great is the pumpkin with the face, and then Marcel's like eating out of the pumpkin. Everyone's like, that looks really weird. She's like, it's delicious though. So this is where Marcel's like, Laios, you have to learn magic. I can't be the only caster in the group, and there's too many things going on. So she starts teaching him magic, and so Senshi sits Chilchuck down and is like, I'm gonna talk to you and teach you about things.
Yes, I forgot about that scene.
The birds and the bees.
And the bees, which is where Chilchuck has a great straight man reaction of wah.
Yes.
I think my favorite part about Laios learning magic is learning about mana sickness and then watching him go through it. This is amazing.
Yep.
It also was cool that his sister's talent turns out to also be his talent. So once he starts learning magic, he can also see the spirits, just like she always has been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
But he thinks he's hallucinating as part of his mana sickness.
Yep.
So he heals Marcel's ear, and then they have Senshi lay on the table to heal Senshi, and he's half naked, and like he has to touch his chest, and he's like, "Oh, please don't touch me there." Marcel's like, "No, you can't hesitate. That's number one reason for failure." But Laios does get his mana sickness, so the rest go out to go look for. Oh, they're gonna track the dungeon changes. So the dungeon shifting around. They're going to try to study it, figure out patterns. And while they're out, they're attacked by a cockatrice. Jeremy, you called it.
Hey! And it does. I mean, that's what a cockatrice looks like. They do another weird thing later where they use hippogriff in a way that I'm not familiar with. I'm used to the hippogriff being the one that's in the water. I think, at least that's what I remember it being. But now I want to check and see if a hippogriff is actually a horse griffin.
Anyway, they make Marcel go out and try to scream at it because she's the tallest of the group, just like Laios is able to do with the basilisk. She does a terrible job. She gets bit. They manage to kill the beast. And they go back, and they're like, she's like, Laios, I got built. He's like, okay, here's what you got to do. I know how to fix this. You sit down, you squat down, you cover your ears, and you get into a ball. She's like, okay, how's this going to help? He's like, it's not. You're about to turn into a statue. She's like, what? And then she freezes in like this horrible pose. He's like, no, she's in danger of like tipping over and breaking. I tried to help her. Laughed very hard at that scene. That was a very good joke.
Yep.
And then it gets better.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I know how to fix this.
Yeah, how do we balance her? I'm going to use her as the cooking instrument.
A pickling press.
Pickling press.
Yep.
So yeah, they're like, okay, well, it'll fix itself naturally, but it could be like 6 months to 10 years. So then they start looking for. He starts working on spells that could work, but he doesn't know how to pronounce anything, so he's not doing a great job. Senshi's cooking, and
Chilichuk's looking for herbs.
Chilichuk's looking for herbs. They kind of try all three. Eventually, she turns back into human.
Just in
I think
time
it took
as she's
about-
about to fall.
Yeah.
I think it took about 4 days, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then they have a meal, and there's this great scene of Marcel like about to eat and thinking of all the stuff she's going to say. She goes, "Wait, no, I need to say something first. Don't ever use people as a human pickling way."
Yep.
That's her number one priority to say. Great scene. Because you think she's going to say something like, "Thank you, everyone," or "I like just really appreciate the group," and like, nope, you guys suck. Good stuff. Chilchuk manages to figure out some patterns in the city, and they're able to get back to basically where they had killed the red dragon and stayed. But they see one of those Iverns
Yeah, yes.
flying by, and Marcel shoves everyone into the wall. And the reason this is because the wall hasn't formed into a solid yet, because it's being fixed by dungeon cleaners. And we learn all about dungeon cleaners, which are tiny little bugs that go around the dungeon, eating everything that's out of place and pooping everything back into place. It's basically cells at work. Jeremy was right.
Yep. And they look like little slugs.
Yep. The thought I had was, well, then since she didn't need to clean out the bathrooms upstairs.
Yeah, the dungeon cleaners would have done it.
Yeah, you can poop anywhere. The dungeon cleaners will take care of it for you. Which then answers that question.
But he needed fertilizer.
That's true.
He did.
That's
No,
true.
he had a good reason for doing it. I just had thought like, oh, that has to be done at that time, and then had to like refix that in my brain.
Well, and it also makes me wonder, like, how long do adventurers have if they're not recovered?
Oh.
You know, because these dungeon cleaners might just devour your corpse, then there's nothing.
Did they say maybe they don't do corpses because the souls are still
Oh.
attached?
Well, that's actually a really interesting point, because they didn't do their gear down on the 7th floor.
I think they mentioned something about the
6th or
cold
whatever.
might have saved it though.
The cold. Okay.
I think they made a comment about that. We're lucky the didn't get to
So maybe they don't eat outsiders, is what you're saying. That could be. But if they'll eat outsiders' equipment, be surprised if they wouldn't also.
I would just say maybe they don't eat anything that has a soul attached, because monsters don't have souls
That's true.
specifically. So they could be eaten still.
That's possible.
Otherwise, you're right. Yes,
wait,
there's
wait
a
a minute.
time limit.
If monsters don't have souls, how could the dragon's soul be combined with her soul?
That's a good question, but monsters definitely don't have souls.
Unless they
Right?
do, and we're just being lied to.
I thought that was the big thing, is that the monsters can't be revived. But you're
Unless
right.
the
The dragon
monster-
definitely has a soul, because that's a huge element of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with the cat girl. Like, she's entwined with
Yeah.
another
With the-
soul.
Right, but that's
monster
outside
soul.
of the dungeon. That's a complete.
That's true, but they have to use magic to do it.
So
But yeah,
monsters do have souls.
I wonder if it's.
Or maybe certain monsters.
It could be that certain monsters do. I wonder if it's
And-
like.
Do you guys remember anyone saying monsters don't have souls? Did I make that up in my head?
Or- No. I'm pretty
I
sure
have
you're
a vague
correct.
memory.
But I'm wondering, does that implication mean that perhaps the dragon used to be a human that Mad Mage turned into a dragon from the olden days? I don't
That's possible.
Oh no, that means they're cannibals.
know. Ah, I guess you're
Since
right.
he was okay with that, I mean, once he looked at the possibilities, he's got to move on. Or
Is
there's
the
the
fish man really a
not-
man?
right, exactly. Or there's also the possibility that it's like how to pick up girls in a dungeon, or how not to pick up whatever. Hestia. It's the Hestia anime, where basically you
Hestia's
have
Bestia.
Hestia's Bestia, where you have reincarnation of the monsters. So I wonder if their soul is just stuck in the dungeon just like everybody else's, but it reincarnates into the monster when it's recreated. I don't know.
Probably could have got answers like that if this anime would have finished on time 24.
Like we were told.
There you go. There. Now it's my fault. They find the stairs. They decide to stop to cook a meal. They eat a brick.
It's not good.
Yeah, one of the things that didn't taste good. The
Okay, so this is
dungeon cleaner's
hilarious.
poop.
Because, so, of course, Laios is going to ask, since it's not hardened yet, can I eat it? And Senchi's like, I don't know, but I guess you could. And so he takes a bite. He doesn't like it. But then a couple scenes later,
he keeps going.
Most of the brick is gone.
He's just eating it out of the fact that he can. It has nothing to do with the taste. He's like,
Yeah,
oh.
so gross.
Shiro and Kabra's group shows up. And this is where Kabra's like, hey, they recognized us but didn't like freak out, so they clearly didn't rob us. Something else is going on here. And then they decide to all have a meal together, especially since Shiro is so weak and clearly not resting and eating. So they break up into smaller groups so that the monsters won't be attracted to them. There's a cooking group, and then Laios, Shiro, and Kabra all go off alone. And I think Cat Girl, for now, yeah. Cat Ninja goes with them, and is that it? Just the four of them? Anyway, they do. Yeah. Laios does his recap of the story, and then he asked if he could talk to Shiro alone, and tells him the whole truth about they killed the dragon, brought Fallon back with black magic, and then as they're bringing these ninja girls, I mean, there's like, we need to talk a little bit about the ninja girls, because I thought it was really interesting to say there's a Western fantasy world area and there's an Eastern fantasy world where there's Oni and spider demons and they have like their own whole fantasy world, but they still exist in the same world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And what's weird is that the spider demon keeps showing up, and I don't understand where it's coming from. Is it a summon from the white one? Is it one of the ninjas transforming? Like, what is that thing?
It's definitely the one in all white with the two dots on her forehead.
Yeah?
It's
the main retainer?
But I don't know if she's turning into it or if she can create it. It's definitely not... Like, it looks like a drawing almost. Like, it's not real looking compared to all the other monsters. And she's definitely the one controlling it. I know that. But I don't know what it is.
No.
We see her bringing food with Senshi, and Shiro is very upset. Who then blabs, the black magic. And then we see Fallon is transforming. The group is attacked by harpies while Chilchuk tries to warn Marcel, hey, people know your secret now. Laios has been blabbing. And then Fallon shows up and just starts murdering ninjas left and right. And they all start fighting her, and she starts kicking and she's literally murdering people, which again is not the worst thing in Delicious in Dungeon, because there is resurrection spells. Yeah. But yeah, she's crushing people beneath her feet. One of the gnomes has an Undine familiar that he can control, and she's able to use a spell to kill it. And they Laios sees her and says, that is the coolest monster I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It is frozen. But he doesn't.
Like.
He eventually is able to. He agrees to help fight, and it actually comes to the callback of like all monsters are bad, and he has to remember that. But when he goes to hit her, she does say, "Help me, brother." So he stops. That's when Cabra does the throat, heart, kidney punch, lung. But she survives that, and she gets away.
Not before stomping him into the concrete.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, she does kill him. So they start. Oh no, she does a huge AOE spell. Marcel shields who she can, and then Fallon leaves. And so they start reviving who they can. They do get the whole party revived, but they have to like revive another reviver so they can do that. Meanwhile, Shuro, super mad. He's assuming the black magic is responsible for the transformation, so he's blaming Laios, and Laios slaps him across the face. And this is they start arguing and punching each other, and Shuro's like, I don't like you, man. I'm not your friend. And Laios is like, no, you're my only friend. He's like, no, you're annoying and you're tough to talk to and you don't understand social cues. I'm in love with your sister, but I put up with you and I don't want to be around you anymore, while they're punching each other. My worst fear. Thank you, anime, for touching on that. But also, I had this thought. Jeremy, we always argue about a fight being determined by power levels versus emotion and determination, but we've never ever once seen a fight determined by nutrition and self-care.
Yes, just like, you're hungry, you're gonna lose.
Yeah, I've had 3 meals a day and I sleep 8 hours a day. You can't beat me in a fist fight, man.
Yep. I was totally behind the rules of this fight.
Yeah,
this was awesome.
I was giving it down. I was like, I've never seen that. We've argued 100 times about 100 fights.
Yep.
That's a new one for us. Very cool. Yep. Shuro actually eats something after he loses his fight. Everyone's revived. So Shuro's group.
One thing that's really funny is that, like, through this whole thing, Senshi is still just standing there holding the food.
He never stops.
All
the fight, he's always like, food, dinner.
Yeah. I think even during the fight with Fallon, he's doing that.
Yeah. No, you 100%. Because at this point, while now that all that's done, Shuro's on the ground with a bloody nose, and he's like, rice ball? Shuro finally eats something. They make harpy eggs, and Laios is like, Cabra, you were interested when I mentioned we eat, which of course Cabra was just like, rumor, you eat monsters, but Laios is like, a fellow foodie, and makes him eat these eggs, which freak him out a little bit, and then they leave.
This also, I don't think they really focused it on it, but it did feel kind of like the seaweed fish egg scene, because it was like, well, are harpies demi-humans? Like how close are they?
There's certain human parts.
Lost it. Oh yeah. The original party, our main group, decides to stay because their whole thing is, A, if we go to the surface, these guys are gonna tell us about the black magic, so we can't go back to the surface. We'll be in trouble. And B, the only way to save Fallon now is to convince the Mad Mage to help them instead of attack them. So they have to go find the Mad Mage. They sometimes change it, like we gotta beat up the Mad Mage, or sometimes we gotta talk to the Mad Mage. But whatever. Either way, they need the Mad Mage to help them. So they sit back off to go deeper into the dungeon, and they go down to the 6th floor, which is the sewer system, and there's snow down there. And while they're kind of recapping everything that's going on, this is where Laios realizes that the elf is the Mad Mage from the picture, and then he's upset about the king dying, who was probably trying to protect the son. But then a blizzard happens, so they all grab hands and they go into a shelter, and the best episode ever happens because there's a shapeshifter, which in this world means they take one of your memories, they take a person from your memories and they recreate them. So there's there's 4 versions of each character in the room. There's 3 doppelgangers for each. And each doppelganger is based on the other person's point of view of you. So we see for Laios's, one's very feminine, almost very Fallon looking, but that's Senshi, because he thinks human men are Senshi, by the way, kind of racist. He thinks human men are very feminine. There's a super power. No, I won't go to the others yet. There's Laios. He's got a super tall, rough version of him because Marcel had apparently thought he was supposed to look like Fallon, and when she met him and he didn't, it like really freaked her out how different they were. So she sees him as like the very opposite of Fallon in every way. And then there's just a dumb version of him that's like, I eat everything. I need to eat the monsters. And that's from Chill Chuck, who knows him so well. And like there's a chart that tells you all about these different doppelgangers and who's who. And it just says he knows him very well and he's an idiot. Great.
I love the fact that all three Laoses were so dumb
bad that everyone's
and so bad. Yeah, they didn't even have to like guess which one was the real one. They all knew immediately. Okay, yeah.
One of the Marcel's is like super prissy, like looks like she's had facial surgery. It looks so pretty. Big pouty lips. That's how Senshi sees her.
Yep. They
notice like anything that Laos imagined is missing a lot of detail in their clothing, which is funny because the doppelgangers are actually pretty close, but he doesn't realize that Chill Chuck's not wearing a scarf. It's part of his clothing, like part of his shirt that wrap around his neck. He thinks it's a scarf. He doesn't know that Senshi has holes in his helmet. He just knows he wears a helmet, and he doesn't know what Marcel does with her hair. So it's just laying there.
Well, it also, I remember in the grid it mentioned that it was because she let her hair down summoning Fallon, resurrecting her. Right.
Yeah. So since they're able to lock up all the Laoses, he gets to be the decider for everyone else, and he makes them all cook meals to look for clues.
Such a good way to have like a cook-off episode.
Yeah. He's able to figure out the Chill Chuck because one Chill Chuck sits on a crate and the other doesn't. One of the Chill Chucks was a literal child, so they knew that one was from Senshi and they got rid of it. But the one on the crate would never do that because of the mimic. I missed this clue. So the Marcel dumps out boiling water, but that's the real one because he knows she's too dumb to remember. She wouldn't remember. That's a dumb thing to do because she got attacked by the Undying from the same thing.
And when that dawns on her, her reaction is so good.
Yeah.
He thinks I'm dumb and klutzy.
One of the great moments, though, is they can't tell the two Senshis apart. And it's very obvious. Like, we've seen the animation style. There's just one, like, chiseled feature Senshi. And they're like, maybe he's not that. And Chilchuk, that's his Senshi, is like, no, he's always been very handsome. He's a very handsome dwarf. And Laios is like, Senshi is a handsome dwarf. So write that down as his notes. Basically, he declares who's real and who's not, and that just starts arguments between those who are remaining, so it doesn't help anything. And he decides, I'll just attack the shapeshifter who's hiding invisibly in the hall by barking like a dog, because I knew a lot of dogs, and I'm very good at barking like a dog. And it works, and the shapeshifter appears. But then he attacks it like a dog instead of fighting it, and Marcel has to blast it with a magic spell and save the day.
I also loved how the food that the mimics cooked turned into like piles of leaves.
Uh-huh. They had to recook everything. This was an amazing way of letting the audience, without telling them, just explore the relationships here, how they see each other, how they see themselves, problems and stuff. This is a great character building episode, and not an ounce of dialogue was needed to explore all those things. Very clever. Almost felt like a cheat because they've set up the world so well. It wasn't. It was good.
Mm-hmm.
Izutsumi.
Izutsumi.
Her friends call her Izu for short.
Izu.
And thus will be referred to as such.
Yeah.
No one calls her that in the entire show. I kept waiting for someone. Someone, please. It's how I referred to her in my notes, though, so maybe we can use it. I don't know. Who cares? Anyway, she's in the show now. She's the main character. She's a lady who's been cursed to be mixed with a beast, a cat. Your guys' thoughts on her?
I like this character. It's funny how, even though she's been living with why can't I think of his name?
Shiro.
Even though she's been living with Shiro for quite some time, or at least his family, she comes across as just a wild animal when she first meets the group. And also the fact that she didn't go back with Shiro's group and stayed in the dungeon and tailed them was an interesting decision. But I really like her character growth of, I'm going to do things my way. My way ends up getting me in trouble. Maybe I should rely on my teammates. Oh, I relied on my teammates too much. That also bit me in the butt. So maybe I should help. I like the bit of a roller coaster that she went through. It was a little bit of a non-traditional growth through storytelling. And I like that her motivation is, well, they're going to talk to the Mad Mage about separating Fallon. Maybe they can separate me. Right. So, yeah. And also, there are lots of funny moments, especially when they end up going to another world and she loses her humanity side. This is pretty great.
Yep. I saw her introduction as they need another reaction to the food. They need to be able to teach another lesson when it comes to eating and everything. And so they needed a toddler. They needed somebody that is going to complain about everything, be super picky, always like throw the food away, not know how to hold their silverware. And she did it great. Like, she played all those parts great and allowed all of the circumstances surrounding fixing that to play out really well. In addition to all the things that you said, Jason, like, she had a lot of great scenes. She had an arc. She had character development. And I'm genuinely curious about where they're going to go with her. But she still, to me, feels stuck onto the party. She doesn't feel like a genuine party member yet. And it's interesting because she even says early on, she's like, "Are you guys trying to make me part of your party?" And she says it disparagingly, like, "No, I'm not going to make him part of your party. What are you thinking?" And then the whole anime is just like trying to force it. But it's okay because I think it's intentional that they're trying to force it. Part of the joke, you know. So I wonder where they're going to go with this. If she's actually going to stay in the next season, or if she'll only stay as long as she needs to and then be gone, move on, or where they're going to go with it.
Yeah, I was really surprised they brought in a new main character so late in the story, at least in the season. That seemed almost odd to me. I thought they did it well, but I do also agree that she feels a little stuck on at the moment. She just doesn't really mesh in naturally with what they've all gone through and how they've kind of formed this natural four-man team. You know everyone's reaction and stuff, and she's kind of this outsider still.
And they even make that even more apparent in the OP, that everyone's in their own bed, but then here she is just sprawled across like two people.
Yep.
Yeah, this is where the OP changes to add her into it. Yep. I want to touch on the what you mentioned about the food, because yeah, she is the toddler, the picky eater. This anime does a lot with talking about meals. I think that's one of its biggest themes is meals aren't just a hey, grab some food and go. Not only is it important for nutrition and self-care, but it's a social aspect. It's coming together. God, if there's anything to take away from this anime, it's, have dinner with or have a meal with try to have a meal with your family like once a day. Just something to sit down and it's a connection. But then they also like pull it into meals are cultural and a way to experience cultures and share cultures and all this stuff they do with meals, and I do all love that. And I think it was something they wanted to bring in. I saw this and I was thinking of my youngest son, of like, oh man, I wish he saw this Senshi yelling at her about the mushrooms, like, you don't throw the mushrooms on the ground. It was cool, and the proper way to hold a spoon, he's past that, but I do remember having to teach my kids how to hold things, and his lesson of like, there's a proper way to do things for a very proper reason. Yes, it is hard when it's uncomfortable and you don't know it, but it's worth learning. Such a good stuff to talk about. And, this is a great fantasy anime, but it has something to say about eating and cooking and those things in the world. I don't know if that's the most important message to be taken away from something this big and epic, but if that's the message they want to go with, there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. So yeah, I like her. Other than she just feels a little extra at the moment. She again is holding Marcel hostage and is like, hey, I want she uses black magic so she can undo my spell. And she has 2 spells on her. Not only is she a beast man, like we already talked about, but she has like a magic incantation around her neck, which actually ends up going off while they're trying to feed her and she's being picky about it. And it summons like a paper Oni demon thing that tries to kill her, and Senshi, who can barely be bothered with it, is like blocking it and they're slaying it, but he's talking about like, you gotta hold these properly. Look how she's holding that knife. That's improper. I'm gonna block that and shatter that knife right now. You need to hold your spoon properly, and you can't be wasting food. That's not good. While they're like setting the demon on fire and killing it. But again, when we learn Senshi's backstory, why it's important to feed them youngings, this scene makes a lot more sense.
Gotta protect the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
After they get her to eat, even though she's like, I ain't gonna be eating none of that monster food, because right now they were using what they got from Churro's party. We get Laios. I wrote down his name so I remember how to pronounce it. It's Laios. Being yelled at by his father in a white void. And then he's yelled at by other characters. And he's like, why is everyone yelling at me? Oh, I'm having a dream. Why am I having a dream? Oh, yeah. Marcel, we sent her to bed because she was looking weak from low mana. And she got attacked by a nightmare. We could tell she was having a nightmare. And in a dungeon, that means the nightmare monster is attacking you. So I'm doing what Fallon taught me. I'm going into her dream. So she's underneath me. So I'll dig like a dog. He actually turns into a dog and digs down into her dream. Her dream is her in a long hallway of books, which I guess is all the stuff she's learned over the years, being chased by a giant chimera monster thing.
It is so hard to explain, but yeah, it's like amalgamation of massive amounts of monsters that she's run into.
Yeah, to call it a nightmare monster is probably sufficient, but yeah, that works perfectly. And he runs with her from it, and it hits him, and it starts like melting his face where it touches him. And then you realize it's not melting; it's aging. It's super aging, and her fear is of being left alone by the people she cares about as she ages slowly, and they age fast and die. Her father
sounds like her dad was human.
Yeah, her dad is human. You can actually tell by her ears. If you look at the other elves, they have pointier ears than hers.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Almost like we just watched an anime really, really good on the whole elf not aging as fast.
Yeah, I like this one better. I think it handled the topic more maturely.
Eventually she's able to defeat it in the dream she summons the Mad Mage's book and hits it, but overcomes the nightmare.
It hits it with the book.
That's
not what it's for.
Oh yeah, you guys notice the spell books that Chilchuck's image, the doppelganger from Chilchuck had the spell book that just looked like cartoon drawings. Because Laios had seen the spell book, so his was closer but not exact because he doesn't remember it. Anyway, doesn't matter. I wanted to call it this dream scene because whatever they're talking about, there would be a picture on the wall behind them showing the image. Like she mentions her mom, and it's like her mom looking disappointed behind them, and then she mentions her dad dying, and it shows her mom at a grave with her. There's all these background visuals going on, little attention to detail that was just perfect. But they wake her up, and they take out the nightmares, which are just clam shells, oyster shells in her pillowcase. So they cook them up and they eat them. And when the steam rises, they're able to see into her dream.
Except the dream is not what we saw. It's more
it's colorful and cartoony. Yeah.
It almost seems like the dream must have continued for a while, and he was never a person. He was always a dog.
Yeah, it showed him like a little puppy.
Yeah.
I do think this fear, like I said, ties into the antagonist. I do think the Mad King had the same thing going on of having, I have this best friend, like a brother to me. He's going to age up and die, and I'm going to be left alone, just like the original king had died. And so this whole dungeon granting immortality to the Golden Kingdom was all because of that, which is ironic because the thing the guy did in reaction to that was to go out and die.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where I thought it was going last time when I said I think it's more of a tragedy than a curse. I thought he's probably trying to preserve the life of the entire kingdom. I don't know why, but that does seem to be what the mad magician. I really like lunatic magician. I like the sound of that better.
Really, over mad mage, like it just pops.
Yeah, that just rolls off the tongue.
Oh, no, lunatic magician has a feel of eloquence and mystery and like depth of flavor.
Right, nerd.
Yes.
What is it called when two words have similar sounds?
Like
they rhyme?
No, like Peter Parker, and like you use that on purpose because it punches because they both start the same.
I know what you're talking about.
It has a name.
I don't remember the name.
So that's what the Mad Mage gives me. It's like that Peter Parker. It punches. Anyway. They get to the place where they had originally fought the Red Dragon in the very first episode. They're in that hall, even though it's all snowy now, but their gear is still there. And they also have to fight an ice golem from when Senchi's like, oh, I had flushed one of the golem cores down and whoopsie, create an ice golem. And it's Uzumi and Chilchuk have to work together to fight it. He shoots the core with an arrow to help identify it, but points out I can use ranged weapons. They just don't do any damage. Which I'm not sure if I like. This is not an RPG world. He doesn't have a stat for damage. If he's able to pull back the bow, it should do the same amount of damage as anyone who pulls back the bow. So I don't understand what he's trying to say here. Like, I get if he was throwing knives, but
I think it has to do more with like the type of bow that he can pull the string of. Probably not a strong enough weight.
Yeah, maybe the weight isn't good.
Do you think that was his bow?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, he's basically saying if I use kid weapons.
Yeah, this is my Nerf bow.
All right. The way you phrased it sound like, hey, my attack stat is low, and that shouldn't matter if you're using a weapon of someone else. But if it's just his weapon, that makes sense. All right. She's able to kill it. Then they take shelter in a cave, and while Senshi is trying to thaw out the frozen fish, it becomes a sauna. So they all sauna together.
This is the scene where they have to blindfold Laos because
he's like, tell me where the nipples connect.
That's so good.
Then they change into winter gear after that and head out. The next time they stop to cook, Senshi is too tired and falls asleep. So Laos is like, I'll cook. And Izutsumi is like, I'm not eating any of that monster stuff. He's trying to tell her, like, it doesn't, like, no matter what you eat, it doesn't matter. Like, if something eats a sheep, it doesn't become a sheep. A sheep eats grass, it doesn't become grass. And they look outside and there's a tree with a sheep growing off of it. He's like,
not helpful, dungeon.
Yeah. That's, what is it called? I wrote it down somewhere. Baramits. It's Baramits? Baramits. Something like that.
Why not?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I've never heard of that before. I have no idea why a sheep is growing off of a tree here.
Yeah, that is a thing. Central Asia, the lamb of Tartary.
Huh. So she decides to go get that, but he's like, no, don't. That is used as it's not harmful, but it baits carnivores in, which, hey, there's some wolves, dire wolves to be exact. And he jumps in to save her, and she runs off, and Marcel follows her, and they end up in a cave being pursued by the dire wolves. And they show Itzumi like sniffing the air of like two directions, being like, it's that way. but that looks hard. I'm going the other way. And Marcel being like, are we heading the right way? She's like, we're heading the easy way. It's fine. And this comes to that scene that Jason had mentioned about, hey, I have things in my way towards my goals, and I got to do stuff that I'm uncomfortable with, like eating monsters, but you can't always just take the easy way because that'll just move you away from your goals. Izumi does get attacked by a dire wolf and saved by Marcel. They do make it back to the rest of the group.
I do love when they get a little separated and Marcel's like, well, what do I do? And she's just like, well, just run from them. And she's like, they're just going to keep chasing us. So like they get separated, and then all of a sudden the shockwave of the explosion magic she used comes down the hallway.
So they cook an unripe one. Which was gross.
Yeah.
This was a little disturbing.
Yeah. Like veal, but lamb.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But out of a fruit.
Yeah.
And it's delicious.
Of course. Everything they cook is delicious.
With it has like ketchup with it.
Yep.
Okay, we see Shiro and Kabra's group reach the surface, and they're like, hey, well, we'll go talk to the island lord tomorrow. But then they realize the elves of the west have arrived. And we had mentioned in the last episode there's some political drama going on. The elves of the west are like, hey, we want to come in and take care of this dungeon. But mostly what they're really interested in is that magic spell that grants immortality. And Kabra's like, hey, I was in a village that had a dungeon, and then the elves came, and the dungeon popped, and monsters came out, and the elves just started slaughtering. Everyone died except for me, and I don't want that to happen here. So we need to go right now to the Lord's house. They literally interrupt him talking to the elves to be like, "Hey, this is going on in the dungeon," and he tells them, "I'm from that village," and they're like, "Oh, you're the guy that survived." He's like, "Yeah, I actually lived with the elves for a while, and I was going to join you, but you don't let non-elves join, so I don't know. I'm doing this now." Again, that's really main character stuff of like, I was trained by elves, but they wouldn't let me stay, so now I have all these skills. Whatever. And he's like, "Hey, let's just evacuate the dungeon and buy some time so that we don't feed it." He's like, "I'm worried you'll go in and it'll feed it and it'll get too overpowered." And they agree, even though they don't trust him about it. Also, most of the elves not wearing shirts, which apparently we see Senshi, very similar thing. Elves don't like male elves don't like shirts. Yeah.
Yep.
How else are they supposed to show off their gains?
That's right.
How are they having the gains?
I know, right? They're all thin.
The group is eating eggs Benedict, and Laios is like, "Hey guys, I don't think I'm hallucinating." It's because Izumi can sense the spirit, and he's like, "Oh, hey, the hallucination I think is real, guys. It's a ghost that's been trying to talk to me." And it shows the ghost like all this time being like, "Hey, will you talk to me?"
I love the ostrich feel of this whole thing. He's just like, "Yeah, I thought if I just don't acknowledge it, it would just go away, but it never did. So I just continued ignoring it."
So it's an evil spirit. He's like, "Oh, guys, he's mad. We called it evil. He does not like that." They agree for the spirit to take them somewhere. It wants to show them something, and
in the context of this, it felt like, down the hall and through a door, we'll meet whatever. And no, that's not what he meant.
They're pulled through the ground and teleported to basically another world. They wake up in the Golden Country, the whole point of the dungeon.
They're literally just pulled into another floor of this dungeon.
Right, but no.
Yeah.
Kind of, yes. Because no.
Yeah.
It was tough to tell what exactly this place was, because there's a sky, the dungeon is on what seems like the surface. They can grow food. They look like people.
They're just inside the castle. So the whole dungeon is a shell outside of it.
But you can see the castle.
Mm-hmm. It's all illusion outside of it.
I don't think so.
I do. I think so. I think just like how there's water coming in that level where they have the canals and stuff, which that water's coming in from above. Like the magician is doing weird stuff in here, but I think that the dungeon is wrapped around the castle, and then the castle exists in this spell where they have immortality and everything, which goes into the dungeon as well. But they've got their own little bubble. All the monsters are there. It's got a fake sky.
The way it was presented, it feels very. I think we'll have to wiki it in order to get a decent answer, but it feels very much like an alternate dimension. Like the way they transport there, the stark difference between it and the dungeon, also the inhabitants. Like in the dungeon, they appear as ghosts, but here they're just normal people.
Here's because I had that thought, like, oh, cool. They kind of like skip forward, but they go back. And especially after they're like, hey, your goal is to get to the bottom, which has never been the goal before because the Mad Mage is not on the bottom. But what the help they need, we find out, is at the very bottom. So it doesn't make sense for the ghost to have pulled them down and then send them back up when they want them to keep going down.
Not necessarily down, inside of. Like, it may not be a floor below that this castle, that this village is in.
Adjacent?
Like an egg.
Like another dimension?
No, just an egg. So like the yolk inside. By dimension, if you just mean like an illusion spell wrapped thing, then sure. I was imagining it was like another place over here that it portals them to.
Feels like
I don't think that's what's happening.
It feels like a different plane of existence when I watched it.
I'm going to have to go with the Beastie Boys and say it's another dimension, another dimension.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about our right to party, but
no. Doing the intergalactic.
Yeah,
you know, intergalactic. Yeah.
Planetary. I don't even remember that. No.
Another dimension, another dimension. What is happening?
No, I don't remember that at all.
What is this podcast?
All right.
Drop.
Okay. They wake up in the countryside, and this farmer. First off, shout out to the great Senshi vomit scene. Oh my god, so perfect. Yes. just straight waterfall of vomit as his eyes look. His dopey looking eyes are looking straight up. A farmer picks them up, and the farmer's like, "Oh, I know them. These are them." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, I'll take you to someone who can explain it." They get there, and they find out that that person to explain it is not there. So they're offered a tour of the area, and so Laios is like, "I want to see the monsters." And by the way, this place has nice monsters. They're literally the cattle of this world.
I got to milk a minotaur.
Got to milk a minotaur.
Which is probably one of the most awkward scenes I think I've ever seen, because it's like this, Minotaur is a humanoid style, like, bull.
Let's not forget.
Just like
we prepared you a meal, a minotaur, as your party requested. Everyone looking at Laios, and they're like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Oh, he keeps breaking the rule. What's the scene where Marcel eats the eggs, and she's like, "These are familiar." Oh no, it was the doppelganger scene where she mentioned how much she likes the eggs, and she's like, "But I've never eaten fishman eggs." So, and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah.
That's right. Oh, that's right. You didn't find out."
That was so good. Anyway, yeah. Senshi is shown the crops, but learns they don't need to eat and they don't need to farm. They just do it because they're bored and they need to stay busy. And Marcel lets them put dresses on her because they've been designing dresses, like extremely weird dresses, some of them, but they don't have anyone to model them. That they don't have any models. So
one of them looks like DLC if this was a game.
Yep.
Or microtransaction.
And we've already kind of referred to it a few times when we talked about her. But Izutsumi, is acting like a house cat, a lovey-dovey house cat, because this world has a barrier on it that makes all monsters nice. And her beast side is being forced to be nice, so that she's turned into like this super affectionate cat lady that's always cuddling with Marcel, who also gets put in dresses. They are served a meal and talk to Yard, who is Delgol's grandchild. Delgol being the king that was of this kingdom. And Delgol says, you guys are, or Laios specifically, is the prophesied hero, because we were told a hero with a winged sword would come and stop the bad mage. And he's like, the sword I picked up on the way here? Not me. They're like, no, that's the way prophecy works, right? Like, and they're like, so promise us you'll save us. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll think about that. And then they all go to bed and talk about how the meal sucked, because
he also recognized that the sword had a lion on the front, so
that
was the winged lion symbol.
Yeah, the sword changed and grew a lion head. Then they go to bed to talk about the prophecy, what they're going to do, how they definitely cannot probably save these people, and the meal sucked. So Senshi cooks breakfast in the morning. Yard asked, hey, what happened to my great-grandfather? Like, yeah, well, the legend is he showed up, promised his kingdom to whoever saved him, and then turned to dust. And he's like, oh, good. Well, then his torment has ended. That must be nice.
At least someone got out.
Yeah, someone got out. Warns them about Thistle. They all eat pancakes. Even Yard is like, oh, it's fluffy and nice. He's like, you guys didn't lose your sense of taste. You just got to rebuild it up. Tastes a thing.
Taste is a muscle. I don't think it is.
Yeah. Well, eyesight's eyesight. If you are in the dark for a long time, you lose your eyesight, right?
Well, I can tell you this. I went for a dozen years without eating a lot of different foods, and when I came back to them, they tasted just as good.
Okay. We have a real example. Letting it go.
Yep.
Warns them the Mad Mage, whose real name is Thistle. So now I do want to talk about the ludicrous wizard.
Ludicrous.
Your guys' thoughts on Thistle as the antagonist of this anime?
I think it's interesting, but I don't know if we know enough about Thistle yet. I know, obviously, for some reason, wanted to make sure that there was a forever spell on these people, which ended up affecting the king, because the previous king was assassinated. And so I don't know if it was out of a sense of loyalty and duty, or if it was a sense of like family and love, or what happened there. But it seems Thistle has like a singular focus at this point, and that's finding Goldog or Delgol. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very much the latter. I think it's a sense of family and a sense of indebtedness, of being taken in to the kingdom. It sounds like he's the only elf. So he could have just been a cast out, but instead the king took him in as a jester to raise with his son, which of course turned out to be the other grandparent, whatever, Delgol. And so yeah, he's a very interesting character, because his motivations started out good, and like any good tragedy, they did not lead to good results. And how he has been coping with that so far is pretty awful based on what they described. Like, he even imprisoned and killed some of the villagers to determine who was responsible for helping Delgol escape.
Yeah.
Right. So he's definitely gone to the dark side. And if the dark side is really that dark anymore, I've heard some people say it's just a matter of grays. But anyways, he's gone to the dark side. He's Darth Thistle now, and we're just kind of left to wonder what he's if they can talk any sense into him. If they can bring him back to the light.
You're getting a little lost in your trolling here.
Yeah, oh my God.
It was a
You lost
valiant
me.
effort. All right, so they are escorted. They're like, hey, we're going to send you back. Oh, cool. No, you were going back the same way you came. Cut to Senshi throwing up. Yeah, screams. Thistle suddenly appears behind Yard and is like, who were you talking to? And that's the last we see of Yard and Thistle. Our heroes arrive in a dwarven cistern. And they're lost. But Senshi is able to decipher the dwarven symbols on there, even though it's ancient dwarven writing and he shouldn't know it, and help locate where they are. Meanwhile, Laios and Marcel have found tracks, and Marcel's like, oh, I think it's Fallon. It looks like her giant winged creature form she's taking, half dragon, half giant chicken. And they're like, nah, probably not. And Senshi suddenly starts freaking out because he thinks it's a griffin. And it is a griffin, and it attacks them. And it specifically grabs Senshi and carries him away. And they're like, what do we do? He's up in the sky.
Hold on, though. Because it's fighting Laios and Chilchuk and Marcel, and then Senshi just takes off. He's like terrified. Like this is so unlike him. Every other fight he's either been involved or he's just been holding food. Like none of the other monsters seem to really like break his nerves. This thing he sees and is just like out of his mind, scared, goes running, and then the griffin sees an easy meal, so it swoops down to grab it.
So to find him, Marcel makes 3 familiars, and they basically look like little clay half-shaven birds.
What are those, mushroom?
Yeah, peeps.
Peeps.
It looks like peeps, but flattened with wings. She's able to share their vision, so she sends one out and flies it around. And she finds the griffin nest, but the griffin kills the familiar. So Laios is like, I'll shape the next one because it matters what's on a monster. Like they have features for a reason. So he designs
aerodynamics, man.
Basically makes a little dragon out of it. And she uses that to carry a rope up to Senshi, and it does better, but it still gets killed by the griffin. So he starts making the third one. I'm gonna make it super detailed, give it super cool scales. Goes all nerd, loved it. But she takes it. She's like, no, I know what to do. And she makes this long snake fishy thing with like 10 wings, and she names it wingfish, flying fish, skyfish. And she flies that around and uses it to pierce the griffin's shoulder when it falls down, and Laios is able to kill it, and Senshi is saved. And then she's all mourning the death of her familiar, and Laios is like, let's eat it, and starts chopping it up.
One part I'm not sure we touched on. While Senshi was captured, Chilchuk and Laios start pontificating over
who is.
Yeah, like, wait a second. How can he know what these words mean? And then all of a sudden they realize as well, they're like, he said that he's been in the dungeon for 10 years, but this dungeon wasn't discovered until 6 years ago. Something's not adding up.
Which I remember from the first episode being like, well, that was weird. I swear they just said this was a 6-year-old dungeon. Did he just say he's been here 10 years? So that was a cool callback. So yeah, and he's not eating. He's like, I don't really want to eat right now. And so Chilchuk, this is where he's like, hey, my name is Chilchuk. I have a wife and daughters. Something no one knows about me, and I don't get to see them for reasons I won't go into. But now I've introduced myself. Please tell us about you, Senshi. And so Senshi gives his backstory, which is basically the vast version is a bunch of dwarves on this island before the dungeon were just looking for dwarven technology because from the dwarven elven war, they're just looking for stuff they can cash in, and they stumbled upon the dungeon. And it was covered in gold, so they went in feeling greedy. Senshi was against it, but he didn't want to seem out of place, so he pretended to be greedy too. And by the time they realized that they were lost, it was too late. They started having to eat from the dungeon, but they started getting attacked by a griffin who one by one was killing them. And it came down to just the leader who's like, we have to feed the young and we have to take care of Senshi. Senshi, who was never allowed to go out hunting, he had to stay behind and make maps. And the third guy, who was like that guy in every survival thing, who's like, what about just taking care of myself?
Yeah.
We don't need to take care of Senshi. At one point, the leader and that mean guy go out and have an argument, and you hear fighting and screaming, and then just the leader comes back in and he's like, hey, we were just attacked by the griffin, and I killed it, but it killed the other guy. Now I have meat. Eat this.
Don't go outside.
Don't go
look outside.
Don't go outside and look. So Senshi ate, which was just like boiled meat, but at least it gave him his strength back. And then the guy just left. He left one day and never came back. Eventually,
instead of going out for milk and cigarettes.
Yeah. Senshi eventually leaves, and everything's been cleaned by the dungeon cleaner, so he didn't see anything.
Except for the helmet.
Yep.
Which was dented in, which was a big clue.
But it doesn't have the holes in it yet. I went back and looked, and it doesn't have the holes in the rim yet. So that even comes from something else that we don't know about.
Senshi was abducted by orcs. They taught him all about surviving in the dungeon. Eventually, he made his way outside, but didn't wander very far because he knew how to survive in the dungeon. And then the dungeon was discovered, and so he just kind of set up a life.
Now he's institutionalized.
Yeah. He lives in the dungeon. His big thing, though, is he's terrified both of griffins killing him, but mostly did I eat dwarf that day, or did I eat griffin? If I eat a griffin, I'll know the truth. So they cook up the griffin. I don't
know if I want to know.
And Laios is like, I know what we'll do. We'll cook up the griffin.
And Marcel and Children are like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah. So they do. He points out there's two types of meat on it, so they cook up both. Senshi tries them, and they're very different. And then Laios is like, aha, I figured it out. Because there's no reason a griffin would have attacked your party, but you had a pony, which they ate, which is why also he loved the Kelpie. That was super sad. Extra layer. Yeah. He's like,
They've been pointing out these mushrooms that they've never seen before.
Yeah, and there's these purple mushrooms that they must be poison, but he realizes, no, they're
changelings.
Changelings, and changelings change things that go inside of them and touch their spores. And
go in the circle.
They weren't attacked by a griffin; they were attacked by a hifflepuff, which looks very similar to a griffin and would have been mistaken. Hippogriff, yep.
I love the hifflepuff.
Sorry,
this isn't Harry Potter.
Hippogriff. Which they mistake for a griffin because it's similar, but it had wanted to mate with their horse, which is why it kept coming after them, but not killing the horse because it's half horse.
Get out of the way.
So he takes the meat, puts it into the changeling ring. It turns back into hippogriff meat. He was right with beautiful marbling, which doesn't make any sense because it's not like this creature was fat, but whatever. They cook up that meat, and it's exactly the meat that Senshi had eaten. He didn't eat dwarf. Yay!
And I got the impression from one of the things he said that the meat was horrible, but he wanted to eat it again. And that's one of the things that really bothered him too.
So he cries, and he's happy, and everyone's happy now. Then, while they're leaving, they accidentally step on the changeling ring, and when they wake up in the morning, they're all new species. Laios has become a dwarf. Senshi has become an elf. We've talked about Marcel becomes a half-foot, and Chilchuck becomes a human, and Kitty Girl becomes a kobold, basically a dog.
And hijinks ensues.
Yes. Now, as much as I love what they do with this and where they go with it, and I really do, I think it's great. I do have a minor complaint about the circle. Every time that they put something in the circle, and then later when they do things with the gargoyles and stuff, no. I think he already answered it. Okay, maybe there isn't a complaint. My issue was that it it was instantaneous for just about everything. Even the food, when he took the flesh and he put it in there, the flesh changed instantly, which that implies it was originally a griffin and not a hippogriff, and it changed into a hippogriff because putting something into the circle is what changes it, not what unchanges it.
He was unchanging it. He said this. He says this is already a hippogriff and it got turned into a griffin.
But putting something into a circle, how does that unchange it? Because we've only ever seen it change something.
I didn't write it, man. I don't know.
Yeah, see, and that's where I think that is. I'm gonna say it doesn't fit with everything else they said. Like it.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a griffin the whole time and he just changed it into a hippogriff. How would he know?
The reason it was a hippogriff because the
blunt force
horse of the kick of the horse is what did the dent. Also, when that was Marcel was chasing it, with
that was the first one they killed.
First one, he kicked it to kill it.
Right. Yeah, but that's the thing is that I agree that's what they said, but anything that's put into the changeling circle changes into something else. It doesn't change back to what it originally was.
In fact, that's what's weird about it. The remedy for it is to wash off the spores.
Right. Exactly. So how is getting more spores going to change you back into what you originally were? That part just doesn't make sense.
Story breaking. We can move on.
Well, that's why I say it's minor, but I do think it matters because everything else about the way they've built the world and the way they've built the magic system has been really good, and I haven't seen any holes. So I do think it's important to point this one out because it's weird, and they do the same thing where like these guys walked through it and they didn't instantly change. They changed the next morning. But I do think that they say later when the golems change immediately or the gargoyles change immediately, I think they say, oh, the gargoyles could change immediately because they're not alive. But living things with souls take longer. So I think that one's solved at least.
Everyone's a new species, and they're all complaining. And they decide to go find the changelings, but the paths have changed, and they end up back at the magic door. So this magic door was the original party objective in the very first episode. They were hired by the lord of the island to find this door and just write down what the runes on it were, because they knew magic would open it, and bring it back, and then that would just be the next step of the whole dungeon. They reach this magic door, and they're attacked by gargoyles. Actually, no. First, Kensuke opens the door for them because they can't figure out how to open it, and they pray to Winged Lion Man. And Kensuke emerges from the sword as a giant mollusk tentacle thing now.
But Kensuke was changed by the circle into like this like Death Knight sword.
Later,
not yet.
Yeah,
that's when they fight the gargoyles the second time.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
So they open the door. They're attacked by gargoyles. They're like, okay, we'll just fight them. And guess what? They all suck at fighting now because no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So they like Laios is like, oh, I'm super strong, but I'm getting tired so fast. So they end up having to run and close the door, and then they make dumplings. Guys, I've never been disgusted by a meal in my life, but do not let your kobolds help you make dumplings.
That was amazing.
I know.
They commit to this bit forever.
And they never mention it either.
No. Uh-huh. But every time they show dumplings for the rest of the 2 episodes, there's always some dog hairs in like every 4th one. Yep. All right. Yep. They make dumplings. And then they are attacked by the gargoyles again a little bit later. And they have to use themselves as a changeling ring to change the gargoyles into other stuff. And like you said, Kensuke changes into a demon sword. They have more dumplings and realize that they're going to just change back once the spores wash off. And they do change back to normal. And then they find a trolley. They go down the trolley. We just kind of get this nice quiet scene. Senshi asked Laios about why are you adventure in the first place? And your sister kind of gives the backstory. I was in this rich family. Didn't really work out for me. I went to the military. Didn't really work out for me. Started just helping traveling merchants, and eventually checked in on my sister. She decided to run away with me. We ended up on this island taking odd jobs. Gold scrapers needed protection, so we started fighting in the dungeon. And he talks about how his sister was always abandoned and odd, and Marcel remembers how close she was. She starts crying, and Senshi, who's fixated on this souls or eggs metaphor, is like, what if we ate all the dragon off of your sister? And then Lio starts calculating how many calories that is and how much they would need to eat. And they're like, okay, we'll have to get everyone we know to eat the dragon. So they're going to cut the sister off the monster part and then eat all the monster. And then that should eradicate the dragon's soul so only Fallon exists. That's their plan in this, writing down this mechanical dwarf trolley, which we haven't even talked about how like there's dwarf technology and then it just exists, but it was told not allowed to exist anymore because the elves and dwarves don't want their wars to start back up.
This felt very Dwemer, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
Nerd. All right.
Hey, you knew exactly what I was talking about, so welcome to the pack.
And then we see Cabra's group coming back into the dungeon with the elves following behind them. And that's the end. To be continued is on the screen. Babies wept. Guys, let's go to final thoughts. What'd you think of Delicious in Dungeon Part 2 and as a whole?
I really liked this anime. There was something about it, though, that just didn't quite hook me. I've said so many good things. Like, the character building's great, the storytelling's great. They do a really good job with showing, not telling. I don't really have any complaints, but the story as a whole even the world building's really good. I'm not sure why it's having a hard time hooking me. I'm gonna give it a high 4. I don't feel like it's like that perfect anime for me, but it's really good.
All right.
I loved it. I thought this was so much fun. It was so entertaining. The characters grew on me really fast. After like the first 2 or 3 episodes, I started to really like them, and by the end of the series, or the end of the season at least, I'm just loving it. They're great. They work really well together. The ecosystem, the magical ecosystem, is awesome. And to me, that's a huge thing. If the world building and the magical ecosystem and the technicalities of everything are played with and they're consistent and they're brought to the fore, that's right up my alley. So this is a 5 for me. Very high 5. I like it a lot.
I'm also going 5, especially for the second half, but as an overall. The one thing that I think is missing from it is a stronger theme. I don't feel anything like speaking to me directly, giving me, hey, this really sits with my life, especially as someone who doesn't like to have people watch him eat. So the whole have meals with people, my family, yeah, but like not other people, okay? I don't like people seeing me eat. It's just a weird thing.
Is that a no for the Baka Club mukbang?
What?
The Baka Club mukbang.
No, I'm not doing a mukbang. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I actually don't know what it is. I'm kind of going off of context, and I hope it's not what it sounds like. But
you can look it up later. Sometimes it's done as ASMR.
That's a risky lookup.
Yeah. Look. Yeah. No, I don't. Doesn't matter why. I don't like people watching me eat. I do I love the themes exploring about food and stuff, but like bigger overall themes about heroism or whatever, stuff that Freeman had, aren't there, and that's the only thing it's missing. But the characters are so complex, and yet them, and so when they have these interactions, they fit perfectly. They work great. The world is very cool and fun to explore in. I love like I said in the last episode, it's like a slice of a world that's existing on its own, whether we are watching the show or not. It's not waiting for us. It is doing its thing. It's a great feel to watch the show. and it leaves you feeling good at the end of the day. And the jokes work. It's a well-made anime. I don't have much to complain about, so I think it deserves a 5. All right. In case you missed it, our next anime is Kaiju number 8. Unless you've already read the manga, then you don't have to watch.
No, we're gonna be doing this, are we?
Kidding. I'm just kidding. And then if you have thoughts on Delicious and Dungeon and want to share them with us, please do so on our website, theanimebakaclub.com. There's a contact us button, or you can come to our Twitter at Baka Podcast and talk to us there, or leave a comment wherever you found the podcast. And we probably will get to hear that. I'm almost sure we do.
I gotta admit, I have really enjoyed the comments from the Pririn episodes so far. I haven't seen any from the second one yet.
That's how far back our publishing is right now, just so you know. He's reading your guys' free-read comments now.
They're great. I love it.
All right. I'm excited to see what everyone says about our Mashley episode, where we're all horrible. All right. I think that's it for us. We're going to say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Sayonara.